Hello, welcome to the session, the one where they talk about student choice. My name is Diana Knox, and I am a technology instructional specialist from Clay Community Schools in Brazil, Indiana. I have a background in Spanish, English communications, theater, and then I decided I needed a transition and a change, and I wanted to support our teachers working on technology integration. So I became the technology instructional specialist in 2017. And I serve also as a Canvas administrator for my district, and I co-lead the Canvas users and educators group here in Indiana. And I work with the HEC board. And I'm also one of the original virtually different Keep Indiana Learning digital learning coaches. So I'm so honored to be a part of that group. And so today I wanted to talk to you. Oh, let me just say too, I'm a huge Friends fan, as any child, teenager in the 90s, young adult in the 90s was. So I used that as my theme building for tonight. I love to talk about Friends. I love to talk about anything ed tech. And after we do this, we're going to be able to talk about student choice as well. If you'd like to connect, this is my Twitter handle down in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. So there may be some things about your practices that from the pandemic or from something else going on professionally in your educational community that has caused you to pivot. And we know the pandemic caused a lot of that. But one of the principles that we're going to talk about a lot is this idea of student choice. So I really want to invite you to clear your mind and come into this with an open thought, because there's a lot that we could cover here. There may be some things that you are already doing. This may be an old hat topic to you, or maybe this is brand new. And some people are still asking themselves the question of why. Why would we let students choose some things? And so there are some thought processes here. In America, our education is free. It is compulsory. And that is one of the beauties of our education system. But what happens is we are requiring attendance. We are requiring certain components be met. And anytime that you do that, that does increase your chance of disengagement. And it also makes it feel that I'm just being compliant. I'm just following the rules and going down a certain path. And in an Edutopia blog in 2021, it discussed the challenges that teachers face with this model, because students have no power or decision-making in their educational journey. Teachers are then forced to rely on compliance and control, which can sometimes backfire on you. And really, learning is not an open invitation for our students. And don't we want them? We want them to want to learn. They're more inclined to really buy in and take ownership when we invite them in. So if we look at this through the lens of UDL, we hear a lot of conversation and a lot of discussion about UDL, the universal design for learning. And that is something that we talk about often in today's educational conversations. So why UDL? Well, UDL introduces flexibility to the classrooms so that teachers can teach those diverse populations. We know that a one-size-fits-all approach to education does not work for our students. And so this provides the teacher with opportunities to support every learner, reduces that time that we have to individualize or make assessment accommodations. It gives us a greater opportunity to for our students to accurately demonstrate their knowledge, because we're getting authentic voices and giving choice in how they choose to tell us what they know. We operate under the premise with UDL that what is good for some is good for all. So we know that certain learners have disabilities and challenges that they need accommodations met for them to maximize their learning potential. But in theory, what is good for some could be good for all, and shouldn't they be able to choose? So this helps us make the process of learning more student-centered, which gives students ownership, and they're more likely to stay engaged with us. And the biggest thing is you need to know your students, just like your students that come to you with an IEP or a 504 or some type of a plan. By knowing your students It allows you to make connections. So it helps you to understand that maybe somebody doesn't have enough parameters that get them classified or labeled, but they still may have challenges. They may struggle. And so they may benefit from some of these, the choice of being able to use some of these accommodations. So being human and making those connections with your students is going to allow you to know them even better and put them on a path to greater success. Now, the framework of UDL talks about engagement, representation, and action and expression. And so those are the 3 pillars in the framework. And if this is new to you, there may be a voice screaming inside your head that this is too much. I can't handle it. I'm overwhelmed. Stop. Just try to, they use that adage of how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time. So don't let it be too much. If you are new to this game, start with one small step. If you are in an advanced stage of this, you're ready to tackle perhaps blending things in multiple ways. So as we walk through these 3 foundations, we're going to talk about different ways that you can implement choice into your classes that will allow you to approach it with a UDL lens. So engagement is the first. And engagement is the why of learning. It's the need to motivate our learners in diverse ways. So again, one size doesn't fit all. So there are many things that we can do in order to offer our students some opportunities that would get them engaged. Flexible seating. Allow your students to work wherever you like as long as you're on task. You can keep them going with certain ideas and certain lessons just by making that one little accommodation to them. In methods of engagement, we could also talk about early finishers and giving them choice in things that you work on after the main task is done, keeps them learning. For example, if you are a student of the Modern Classrooms Project era, which focuses on self-pacing, it breaks tasks down into must-do, should-dos, aspire-to-dos. So your early finishers, you would be encouraging and challenging them to take advantage of those aspire-to-dos, and it provides us that opportunity for enrichment that some of the students would really thrive upon, but they don't often get a chance for that. Flexible workflow. You might give them a choice of you have this number of tasks to complete. You choose the order in which you complete them. You have these stations that you need to visit in a station rotation model, but there's not a set order. We're not going in clockwork or clockwise or counterclockwise into these stations. So giving them choice in that flexible workflow draws them in, helps maintain that engagement. We want to give our students a voice and a choice in setting learning goals. Now we know that we're sometimes restricted to the learning, the standards, but still by offering them choice in the different learning goals that we have and helping them or allowing them to help articulate and put together what those goals are going to look like, what the outcome, what the demonstration of the knowledge could look like. That's setting those learning goals, and it's giving the students a voice and choice in that process, which is again going to keep them more engaged in the topic at hand. One of the other methods, and this is one when I was researching this, I saw a lot of positive and negative things about it. And so you have to decide in what you teach and the level of students that you teach, where this could work. And this would be giving the students the autonomy to determine who their working partners are going to be. And by giving them some control over this, you are also going to work on keeping them more engaged in the task at hand. We know in life, you don't always get to pick the people you work with. And at some point you have to take ownership of the fact that you maybe work with people that you don't know well, you don't like, that you are very dissimilar from. But if it's possible, there is value in allowing our learners to choose their groups, because this can help keep them motivated. It can help keep their eye on the goal, and they can, if it's a choice that they make, then you can help them play into each other's strengths and get the very best out of what it is that the task at hand is. So those are some ideas for engagement, which again, engagement is that process of the why of learning, the need to motivate our learners in multiple ways and diverse ways. So by doing these or giving choice in these areas, picking one at a time, you're going to start to create that culture of ownership in the students, keeping them engaged, which is going to probably yield higher return on your learning. Representation is the next step, and representation is the what of learning. That's the visual, auditory, those kinds of things. Representation is allowing the students choice in how they interact with the learning content. And so you may have a textbook that is physical document that the students can pick up, hold, read, but you may also supply an audiobook or an audio file of the chapter or the lesson that you have. And so just because 5 students in the class need that accommodation of having a read aloud, perhaps some of your students would simply choose to interact with the content in that way. So you want visual materials, books, handouts, etc. You can also use this in the form of charts and other visual aids. Auditory is providing read alouds, access to assistive technologies, audiobooks. It can even encompass those instructional videos, which the instructional videos could be a combination of audio and visual, because if you do a screencast, it's going to be you speaking the information, and they can follow along on the screen with what it is. I think choice boards, representation. So if I know that I have a series of learning materials that support a standard, I can give my students a choice of which ones they want to do. So I might provide a wakelet of crowdsourced information that might include 2 or 3 videos, 4 or 5 articles, and maybe even a podcast or 2. And I would tell the students, I'm asking you to choose 4 of these that you wish to interact with. And I could provide one that's a required for everybody to level that playing field, but everything else is going to support the standard and the learning goal. So giving them choice in which types of materials they interact with to learn the content is a fantastic thing. Station rotation is another piece of this. And again, in the station rotation, that gives students the option of maybe they have to hit every station, maybe they have to hit 4 of the 6 stations. And it can be such that the station rotation is a blend of digital and physical or tactile resources, so that students are engaging in multiple ways with the learning content, which is going to open them up to a whole plethora of ways that they can take ownership in that knowledge. The final pillar of the UDL framework is action and expression. And this is one that I could talk about for a long time of why this is important for our students. It's probably the first one that I made strides to reach. And the action and expression component is the how of learning. It's giving students choice in how they express what they know. And I have long had this conversation with teachers. You need to ask yourself, does it matter how the students demonstrate their learning? It doesn't have to be one size fits all. I might have 5 questions I want them to answer that I have on a study guide that they would typically write or type their responses to. Couldn't I give the students a choice, number 1, of you can complete it digitally or you can do the paper and turn it into me? There's choice 1 that I could give. What if I have a student that really doesn't want to do either one of those, but they want to record themselves explaining to me the answers to those 5 questions? That expression, that choice in how they present this is so powerful for the students. Remember, education doesn't have to be one size fits all. My classroom doesn't have to be one size fits all. And I know that sometimes the more ways that we give students to the more choice and the more ways we give students to express themselves in their learning, that does make it a little more challenging sometimes for the teacher to keep track of. But if you have a learning management system that everything would go into there, or they would, even if they're going to give you a physical paper, have them type, I turned in a paper, here's a screenshot of it, but I'm giving you the paper. So it's all curated in one spot so that you can manage it more easily. The other piece is tests. If on a test, you could have different question formats rather than 20 true false questions or 20 multiple choice questions, mix it up because some students are going to do better on one type of question or another. I'm an anomaly to some extent, but true false questions used to make me neurotic because I could read so much into a true false question. I would rather write an essay answer all day long. The choice between the oral and written work. I think that there's a lot to be said. I know I've covered this again, but that oral expression, if I can explain to you what I've learned, that is such a powerful tool for our students. Also, it can be in the form of projects and creative assignments and something that's a little bit outside of the box where they construct something that is putting to use the knowledge and the skills that they have acquired through mastery of the learning objective. And so giving our students choice there is such a powerful tool to help our students create ownership of their learning. Now, one of the things that I caution you to do is not to try to do too much at once, because you can overwhelm yourself very easily. You can overwhelm your students also. So break it down into smaller chunks. It is important for you to take some time to think about what's going to work most effectively for you and what's going to work for your students. You may also have to model and help your students. This may be a very new concept to your students. This idea of ownership. If they have consistently been in classes that has been more about compliance and following those rules and that approach, and I'm not knocking that because that is, what we have known, but I operate under the Maya Angelou principle of when you know better, you do better. And so we've simply been doing the best that we can, but when you are introduced to something like this and you have a thought that can pivot and transform what you're doing in your classroom, try one thing. So plan for that, implement that, reflect on how it went, revise, and turn that into a cycle, because you're not going to be perfect all the time. Get feedback from your students on how something went when you try something new. Don't forget to give them feedback, not even just about the academic content, but feedback about their engagement with what's going on. Help them learn how to advocate for themselves and be in the driver's seat of their learning. The best advice I can give you is that know your students. When you know your students, you're better equipped to meet the needs of them. And so that is a component that I don't think you can spend too much time on. I know that we all have lots of standards and power standards that we have to meet, and our content and our curriculum can take so much time and energy. But without taking the time to know our students and know their strengths, their weaknesses, their likes, their dislikes, perhaps even some of their triggers, we're not going to be able to effectively help give them the choice and guide them into that owner seat and the learning. So don't overwhelm yourself. Don't try to do too much at once, and then view it as a cycle where you plan, implement, reflect, revise, and it just repeats itself over, and eventually you can add more to your repertoire and really make things powerful for our students. Remember that moving away from compliance and encouraging students to become partners in their learning really helps them put the knowledge to use, take their prior knowledge, apply it to new learning, and grow. And I love this quote from John Spencer: student choice is more than simply picking a task. It's about owning the entire learning process. But you have to start small. You have to model. You have to teach. You have to reflect and encourage the students to reflect. And eventually it becomes second nature for you both. And sharing that load with your students, making them partners in the learning, you are guiding them to success and guiding them to reach strong levels of knowledge and understanding. And that is fantastic implementation of student choice into your classroom. Now, thank you so much for attending this session. Keep pursuing learning about UDL, offering our students choice in under those pillars of UDL. And if you are at the beginning of your journey with this, don't forget to visit Keep Indiana Learning. They have a repository of blogs, on-demands, live streams. And I know UDL has been part of the conversation, and I can tell you that there are some things in the works for this coming fall that will have some work with the book UDL and Blended Learning, Thriving in Flexible Landscapes. And we're looking at doing like some book highlights, book study type piece, and some chats on Twitter. And that's going to help you focus on one piece at a time and break down some ideas. Don't forget to, I know the Learning Lab has lots of resources to choose from. So here in Indiana, there are lots of resources that are available to you that are open to the public from Keep Indiana Learning, even outside of Indiana, because we are about promoting our student learning and really making and changing the landscape of education. So again, I appreciate your time, your attention. I appreciate the references, and I will also be available, and I will give you access to these slides and these notes. And I appreciate so much you spending some time with me and my little friend's knowledge and this theme for learning about implementing student choice into the classroom.